Hello comic fans, here's Earl Grey, or rather Ostfriesentee as we call this tea here. Recently I've shown you in a video my Terry and the Pirates books, but I could just sort of review or give you some opinions about the first 3 volumes since I'd read only so far into this series. But now I'm through. I've read all of the 6 volumes of Terry and the Pirates, and as you can see here, I put some markers into these books here. Still a bit random here and there, some stuff that I want to show you. These are the paper sleeves of volume 4, 5, and 6. So now I can put them away. And maybe these first 3 volumes here as well. They're all were all published in that IDW line of the Library of American Comics. So now to 4, 5, and 6 that I have lined up here before me. The importance of Milton Caniff's Terry and the Pirates can't be overrated, I think. It was a newspaper strip which readership rapidly increased with the beginning of World War II. It was some kind of lighthearted, if this is possible, source of information about the events in World War II at the Eastern Front in Asia, of course. And it encouraged people and gave a good amount of patriotic propaganda, how the Americans fight on the right side, and this can't be doubted. This was true. The Japanese and especially the Germans, of course, but that's not so important in this comic here. They were the villains and the Americans were the good ones. And so if there ever was propaganda that was justified, it was in this war here. Nevertheless, there is a particular page where the more light-hearted adventure comic suddenly changes into a war comic. And I'm talking of course about this page here from the 2nd February 1941, and in particular about this panel here, where our yippee-golly-gee Terry character at that time thinks they have survived a Japanese attack, but he is mistaken, and the Japanese bomber comes back, and horror ensues. And Milton Caniff is always throughout the series, very good in his use of silent panels. Sometimes for conveying some humorous aspects that don't need words, but sometimes for the more horrific stuff that don't need any more explanation neither. I've marked this page here because to give you the feel or to show you how this comic changed his tone to a more darker color, even though the colors are still beautiful, but these bruises and marks wouldn't have been possible 2 or 3 years ago in Terry and the Pirates, I think. Well, this is a pretty typical page for Terry and the Pirates. This is from April the 20th, 1941, where Milton Caniff gives us some glimpses into some fight in the war, and how a ship is bombarded by torpedoes and such stuff. This is a bit, of course, the technical view on these events. We don't seldomly see the people suffering from the shots and the bombardment. and it's a bit of the clean perspective on war. But if you were interested in the conflict between China and Japan and the American what the American soldiers did there, and this strip here would give you some kind of information about that, and maybe more valuable and more easily accessible information than your newspaper articles. And this panel here is from the 1st of May 1941, and just a beautiful panel with the sleeping Burma. More Burma here and here, and some silent panels as well. That's really beautiful stuff. I mean, the pacing when you read these newspaper strips as a whole is sometimes a bit awkward because there's a whole week or so where really nothing happens. From today's perspective, maybe some stuff that was very important at the day. Maybe just Terry got promoted at one part in the story, and that was discussed over some weeks, and it was really a bit boring. Now I think a warning is in order, because I will spoil events in the story, even though I will try to keep it at a minimum, but it would be inevitable to do some spoiling here and there. So if you don't want to be spoiled, switch this video off and come back again when you have read Terry and the Pirates. Else I open the book here and show you how Milton Caniff drew the death of one of the major side characters, so to speak. I don't say who, but maybe you can guess. And again, he uses silent panels for it, and the Sunday page here, the colored page, is really beautiful as well. I would say one of the most beautiful pages from Milton Caniff, but that wouldn't be true, because there are so many beautiful pages. For instance, just take this page here with wonderful colors. And in case you have watched my first video about Terry and the Pirates and have wondered where's the Dragon Lady, she will pop up here and there and everywhere, because she's such a cool character, as is its Burma, and in general the women, with one exception, but I won't go there again. And look at the black and white stuff here. His use of black and white got more and more polished and formed, and I will do in the end a comparison between Terry and the Pirate at the end of the run with Terry and the Pirate in the beginning, and you will see how much he has improved. This page here from the 23rd August of 42 could serve as a pretty good example for this patriotism that Milton Caniff transported in his comic, and it's sometimes really a bit over the top, feels a bit like happy-go-lucky. We go into the war and we bomb down the Japanese and we make some witty speeches about it, while the others, the opponents, die. I'm pretty sure with some kind of distance Milton Caniff would have depicted it otherwise, but again, these comics here were really done under the impression of the war events and really wholehearted scorn towards the Japanese. Throughout the comic, they are addressed as the rats and the little people, and he comes up with all stereotypes and belittling and demonizing that you can think of. I think if you don't want to have these things and you want to have a totally political correct comic, you can't read war comics, especially not war comics from that time. They reflect just, they are products of their time, and they reflect the situation at the time. And so, and that's what this comic actually makes interesting, that it is such an historic document. Sometimes it's a bit not the easiest read, because for some weeks, if I'm not mistaken, they discuss the conflict between this civilian here who wants to assault charges against Terry Lee and so on. It's all about Milton Caniff taking the side of the military against civilians who don't understand the need of the soldiers and what heroes they were and so on. But Milton Caniff had this role of an advocate in public for the soldiers and the military, and he took it. And so, yeah, I totally understand it. What was his the force that was urging him to do these kind of intersections in the story that tore a bit of the fluidity of the story apart. But look at this stuff here. Isn't this an amazing art? A Chinese street full of life and everything, and it's just incredibly tiny panel. And at first, when you look at it from that distance, you can't even see what it's all about. Fantastic. And at this point in the story, Milton Caniff knew about that he will end this story in 1946. It was some kind of copyright thing. He wants to own the rights for his own comics, and therefore he had to end Terry and the Pirates. So he knew that Terry and the Pirates will end at the end of 46. But that was the reason for him to even take more work and effort into his comics. Some other minor comic creators would have started to get sloppy and yeah, not so with Milton Caniff. The last 2 volumes of Terry and the Pirates are just incredible. At least the last 2. I love all of them, but there's a steadily improving going on in terms of his art. And so, actually, I wonder what I wanted to show you here. Yeah, Milton Caniff has a way of dividing each panel into, let's say, sub-panels or windows of some. Let's take, for instance, this panel here, where, come on, focus, yeah, where Charles, the character called Charles, shoot at his these Japanese people here, or even more visible there, where you have this little window with these guys here. It's really tiny, but everything's clear. you really have to admire the clarity of Milton Caniff's panels and how he divides the space within each panel. If you look for it, you can see it almost everywhere, how he divides panels into parts to get a clearer structure. And yeah, I found that pretty interesting. So, mark this page here just for this panel here. No, his women and girls are sometimes a bit annoying, and they have character, and but there are no damsels in distress for the most part. And this Sunday page is just beautiful in its color scheme. That's the reason why I've marked that. Wonderful colors. Just the clouds here, the pink clouds, and one of these planes that Milton Caniff drew. Very nice. And on the opposite page, yeah, I guess this is again a spoiler warning, but she lost her boyfriend in the war, and we are now after the war, and we are in October and 46, and she don't know exactly if her boyfriend really died. He was a soldier, and his plane crashed, and but there was no body, and it was chaos as it was in the war, and so she wants to investigate if he really is dead. And now she flies in this plane over that exact place where he was shot down, or his plane crashed. It's just in this phase here, wonderfully done. In contrast, we have, of course, much of light-hearted stuff. A very funny page of two ladies, Burma and the Big Jane, and getting at each other and fighting over our hero, Terry. Some stuff about romantics and so on is really outdated. Incidentally, I have skipped some of the stuff here in volume 5, so let's go through that tome. This one here from the 17th October from 1943, where the flying instructor Flip Cockin of Terry Lee gave him some lecture, patriotic lecture. This was widely received in the newspapers as some important message to the people. The real horrors of war, they're not quite addressed in Terry and the Pirates. Maybe in terms of the characters, this is the only one. Willow Belinda, who lost her parents, they were killed by the Japanese, and look at her face and these eyes here. She really is crazy, and look at that expression here, almost taken from Edvard Munch's The Cry. Maybe this is the only character in the whole comic where I really can relate to, where I can feel that this reflects the horrors of war, like I've been told from my parents and grandparents when they fled from the Russians, actually, from Eastern Prussia. And yeah, the war has never left them, I think. My father is a bit different. He has not a good memory, so yeah, it's a benefit, I think. But my mother always never stopped talking until she died about the war and the horror of war. At one part in the story, Milton Caniff's patriotic propaganda, if I'm allowed to call it that way, got a bit out of hand, and that was at this point here. Two of the female characters got lost in the jungle, and they got company with this ape there. And the Americans mistook him for a Japanese, because, yeah, there's not much a difference between your war opponent and an animal. I would argue that Milton Caniff would have changed it afterwards if he would drew this comic some years after the war. And there is another part where they shoot down Japanese soldiers that watch a movie and they're celebrating afterwards, doing jokes and smiling and all that stuff. Yeah, shooting people that watch a movie. It was a revenge, action of revenge against the Japanese, who did the same thing before. They shot Americans who watched a movie. Yeah, but nevertheless, it's difficult. What I wanted to do is compare the art from Volume 6 with Volume 1 to give you some kind of impression how much Milton Caniff has improved over the run of the comic. And as I said, the reproduction qualities in Volume 1 are okay, but not as good as in the later volumes, as you can see here. And you get a bit more the typical cartoony comic vibe that you can get from other cartoonists as well, and not this straight out perfection, black and white perfection, or the later Milton Caniff, who continued with Steve Kenyon, a newspaper strip, and the books I've already bought, and they wait for me to read, to be read. So I'm really excited. At last, one question has to be answered, I guess, because many comic aficionados would say that this comic here, Terry and the Pirates, is their favorite comic of all time, or at least one of their favorite comics of all time. Would I agree? I don't think so, because of many of the things I'd said. It is a bit aged. Some stuff are more, some tropes are more interesting because of their historical relevance, of their character as an historic document, and of course it's still a newspaper strip comic that was meant to be read on a daily basis and not binged through. So it is hard, of course, for this comic to compete with stories that were meant to be to read, drawn from the get-go, to be read in one sitting or in one go. Maybe as a newspaper strip, this is the best one ever drawn and told, and the art is fabulous, as I will never tire and to say, and I'm really happy and looking forward to read Steve Kenyon. So, enough for today, I think. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.